with the scent of potpourri, the films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to the Obsessive Viewer weekly podcast, reviewing two new or recent release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find more of my work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes and spin-off podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also follow me on Letterboxd and other social media platforms at the username of Obsessive Viewer. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Recently on Patreon, I'm still going strong with my season 2 Severance episode reviews that come out every Friday-ish. I'm 1 week behind, but by the time you're listening to this, hopefully not. I also have companion reviews for episodes of the podcast, behind on those too, but those are reviews of movies that are related to the movies I review on the podcast. And I also have an immediate reaction for The Monkey, which is a movie we're going to be talking about tonight. So there's a lot of stuff on there. Check it out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For all that and a bunch more content. And if you want to support me without messing with Patreon or just make a one-off donation, you can always go to buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer and make a donation there or a recurring donation and quote unquote buy me a coffee. Again, that's at buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. All right, this week on the show, we're going to be reviewing the documentary from MUBI, Grand Theft Hamlet, and in this week's secondary review. But before we get to, before that, we're going to go over some movie news, and then we're gonna review the new Oz Perkins movie, The Monkey, in this week's feature review. And joining me this week on the show is my friend and IFJ colleague, making his first appearance on OV in 2025. His work can be found at MidwestFilmJournal.com, and he can be followed on Letterboxd at the handle of Wounded_Kite. It's Mitch Ringenberg. Welcome back to the show, Mitch. How's it going?
It's going great, man. Super happy to be here and talk some weird Oz Perkins flavored horror.
Yes, I am super glad to have you on here. You were on for the Long Legs review last year, so it's nice to see that kind of collision.
Synergy.
Yes, synergy.
Very, very apropos.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And that entire time I was going through that intro and everything, I was thinking that like moments before we hit record, you said like, I'm really good at this. And then like, as I'm stumbling through, I'm like, shit.
It's very charming, and it's always worse in your own head.
Yes.
Actually,
I know. Believe me, I know. So, anyway, welcome to the show. How are things? Like we haven't been talking for the last half hour before recording. How's it going?
Going pretty well. I've really been, God, we're like almost into March, which
it's insane.
Sickening. But I have been enjoying a lot of like just the goofy genre movies that January has been throwing our way, and we're kind of continuing into that very much with February too, with what we were talking about today. So yeah, kind of a nice little reprieve from Oscar stuff,
yes,
award stuff. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that like these past like 2 months have been kind of a blast in terms of just like watching stuff that are just like not even like off the beaten path, or not even like just like bad per se, but like there's been some really good, like you said, genre stuff in particular that is like, I don't know, like I was thinking about this since now Letterboxd lets you, for I think pro and patron members, they let you kind of look at stats for lists, and I keep lists for like movies reviewed on the podcast this year, and it's funny that like consistently, or at least the last couple of years, it's been like horror has been like up the last like several years. And I think that's, I don't know if that's A, because I'm just into horror, or B, if that's just the way that like the tides, the winds are shifting with mainstream like releases. But it's really interesting to kind of see that. And there's been some really good stuff this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's actually a couple of like January, February things that I still haven't gotten around to. I'd love to see Hard Eyes.
Oh yeah.
And I think the tide is turning a little more towards horror, because just watching the trailer for Hard Eyes, I was like, man, this is kind of cool. Like, we're getting straightforward slasher movies.
Yes.
At a much like higher clip than I think we usually get. And I just got to admire, even if the movie, which I've heard it's actually good, but even if the movie sucked, I got to admire that they're like trying to make kind of, quote unquote new horror icons. Like, that guy has a really cool mask, a cool look. And
absolutely.
I do think like the Terrifier movies probably have a little something to do with that too. The huge success of those movies. I think I've got to hand it to those guys just for, bringing back low budget slashers in such a big way. So really, really cool just to see stuff like that coming out in January and February.
Yeah, I totally agree. And not to rehash an episode of a couple of weeks ago, but when I reviewed Hard Eyes with Sam, we got into like a discussion about how, like, it feels like for me that movie felt like it was harkening back to like the late 90s slashers that came about after the success of Scream, and how like there was a lot of knockoffs and stuff. And like, I don't know if that's Urban Legend, Valentine.
Yes. Yeah, with the Cupid mask. Oh,
yes.
Man. Yeah, with David Boreanaz.
Oh yeah. So a lot of stuff like that, and it's just interesting to see that kind of happening again, sort of. I don't know if that's necessarily like a point in favor of Hard Eyes or a criticism of it, because like I thought it was okay. I thought it was solid. There were some issues I had, not issues, but like there were some quibbles I had with it. But it's still a good movie. I'm curious to see what you think of it when you do get around to it.
Oh, I'll definitely check it out. If I don't catch it before it leaves theaters, I'll definitely watch it pretty much as soon as it's available.
Nice.
I'm an easy mark for slasher stuff, and
Same.
I do think it's a combination of two things. One, just like 90s nostalgia. It seems like we're kind of trying to go back to that era of like horror slasher comedy. Like, I saw they're making like Idle Hands. I'm like,
oh yeah.
I can't believe anyone even remembers that movie. I mean, I remember it, but I was shocked. I don't even remember that. And I also think it's just studios, especially with Blumhouse, who obviously they have a very inconsistent track record, but I will say Blumhouse's credit, and also like the Terrifier movies kind of, I think the studios take notice that like, hey, you can make horror movies for pretty cheap. And it's a pretty low risk, venture for the box office. You make something for $15 million. Doesn't take much to at least break even. Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially with as kind of as hungry as the horror community is for that. Like, it's like it'll find its audience within the horror genre. They're not like assholes like me who will critique a movie to death.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really fun. I also just saw, I didn't even realize that this year we're getting Eli Roth's like Thanksgiving 2.
Is that going to be this year?
I think so.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine those movies are like extremely difficult to shoot.
No. That has me very excited because I loved Thanksgiving.
Don't quote me on that. I skipped the pre-production. So
okay.
But the turnaround on those movies, I don't think is probably too lengthy.
No, I don't think so either.
It wouldn't surprise me if he was done filming it by like April and it was out in theaters in November.
Yeah. Just looking at the trivia, it says Eli Roth rushed the film into production after the critical and commercial failure of Borderlands, which only grossed $32 million against a budget of $110 to $120 million. Jesus.
Yeah, when I see something like Borderlands and I see something like Thanksgiving, I'm like, Eli Roth, like, this is kind of where you thrive.
Yeah.
The Thanksgiving low budget horror. This is kind of where I like you to.
Exactly. Yeah. And speaking of slashers and video game movies, I've been seeing the trailer for Until Dawn, another really interesting slasher that's just like it looks very interesting. Do you know anything about it? Have you seen the trailer or anything?
So I know it's based on a video game. Is that right?
Yes.
I have not seen the trailer. I know it's directed by David F. Sandberg.
Okay.
Who I'm kind of neither here nor there on
Sure.
David F. Sandberg. I do remember enjoying the first Shazam movie when that came out. I remember not liking Lights Out.
Oh,
I'm not a big gamer.
sure.
But I'm aware of those games. And I didn't realize they were slashers, those games.
Yeah, so I'm not aware. I'm not very clear on it either. Like I just know tangentially what it is. I've never played them or anything, but the trailer gives the impression that it's going to be kind of like a Cabin in the Woods-esque sort of slasher movie. So it's a group of people that are in a house and they have until dawn to survive. And if they get killed before dawn, the night resets and they are like being hunted and killed again by someone else, like another monster. So it's like kind of like a Groundhog's Day sort of situation. But with every night is a different kind of monster chasing them. It looks really cool.
Well, I do own a PlayStation 5 that I have exactly one game for. Maybe this week. I own Spider-Man 2.
Oh, nice.
I'm over the course of several months slowly making my way through. It's basically just a glorified 4K player for me, my PlayStation 5. But you know what? Like something kind of slasher adjacent. I think I might. Maybe that'll be my second game I play before the movie comes out. Nice.
I have been, not that this is a video game podcast or anything, but I've been replaying Grand Theft Auto 5 just for shits and giggles. I'm still on PlayStation 4, so eventually I'll get PlayStation 5 for GTA 6 and Ghost of Yote, the sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. So
I would like to play that as well. Yeah, there's a lot of games I want to play.
Yes.
I just have so much other media I consume.
Absolutely.
Video games are like always like my lowest priority. Between books and movies, I consume a lot. So, I'll get around to them eventually.
Yeah, same here. But speaking of playing games, let's stop playing games and let's get into talking about whatever the next topic is. Yes, exactly. So I don't have anything pointed out for playing this week in Indy, but I do just want to mention that if you're in the Indianapolis area, go check out Alamo Drafthouse, Can, Living Room Theaters, Keystone Art, Flix Brew House. Check out those theaters, see what they're playing this week, and go give them your money and watch movies and cool environments. So links to all of those theaters are in the show notes of this episode. But Mitch, how would you feel about going into some news before the reviews? I have two things that I want to bring up, and then a third thing that I want to kind of corner you with a gotcha question.
Love it.
Yes. All right. So the first one is kind of somber, and after last week's episode, this is kind of a not running thing, but the director George Armitage passed away at the age of 82. And I don't know that I've seen any of his work, but I know that you're a fan of Grosse Pointe Blank. How do you feel about that and his passing and everything?
I'm surprised you remember me bringing that up to you. You know what? I mean, George, I'm just processing this because I saw this so sorry if my thoughts aren't super coherent on it, but I did just see that in passing. And George Armitage, I know he directed a lot of kind of fun crime noir genre movies. He really like sort of like inhabited that space that like Elmer Leonard, did in the novel. So he didn't direct a ton of movies, but but two movies in particular I have a lot of affection for. The first one being 1990s Miami Blues with Alec Baldwin. Not sure if you have ever seen that.
I have not.
But that is an amazing, that is a really amazing and kind of nasty little crime thriller with Alec Baldwin playing like a very amoral criminal con man type.
Interesting.
It's really good. And Grosse Point Blank, though, is probably up there with some of my favorite movies of all time.
Nice.
I find it like kind of an oddly profound experience, or movie for something that is kind of feels very slight. It definitely was ahead of its time in terms of like a comedy about a sociopathic hitman,
Sure.
which we obviously saw a lot more of in like things like Barry, and a million other titles. But really what I love about that movie is the chemistry between John Cusack and Minnie Driver. There's this kind of romantic comedy at the heart of this film, of him coming back to his hometown for this high school reunion. And he's this hitman. And something about Miami Blues and Grosse Point Blank, George Armitage was this director who played very much into these kind of fun studio comedies that were everywhere in the 80s and 90s. But he would really let scenes and actors like breathe and add these kind of idiosyncrasies to scenes in a way that a lot of other filmmakers wouldn't. For example, there is a scene when John Cusack comes over to Minnie Driver's house and they haven't really interacted much in 15 years. And one of the first things they do, she's like, "Hey, give me the airplane." And he gets on his back and he like puts his feet up and she jumps like on his feet, and he like opens up like an airplane. And just this very goofy, like odd, cute moment in something that like, I think like other movies wouldn't have these kind of scenes where characters are just goofing around.
Right.
And, kind of, but it's really what makes that movie special is like the warmth and the chemistry between these two people, and scenes like that. It's kind of magical. Like when you're watching it, you truly are like, wow, John Cusack and Minnie Driver must be in love in real life, because this is an incredible moment.
That's awesome.
So I would really recommend checking out Grosse Point Blank. Matt, especially, I think people of our age have a certain affinity for the 90s, and like,
yes,
it's a great movie.
Nice.
So definitely would recommend, if you get anything out of today's conversation, check out Grosse Point Blank.
That I will do. I will make a concentrated effort to watch Grosse Point Blank. I meant to do that before recording, but I just kind of was too tired. But yeah, but the other news item that I have is that the Clayface movie, written by Mike Flanagan, has a director in James Watkins, who recently did oh my god, why can't I think of the movie? Speaking No Evil. How do you feel about this news, Mitch?
I'm really excited. I mean, I'm a big comic book guy, and I'll be honest, I have always, growing up reading comics, and even to this day, I've always been more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy, but I've read plenty of both. And DC has obviously, you would not call their track record consistent with movies in the past, 15 years. However, I think with the announcement of something like this, which I read is like a $40 million budget, and going to be this kind of character study horror movie written by Mike Flanagan and directed by James Watkins, who I have to say, I was ready to hate the Speak No Evil remake that he did, because frankly, the trailer played incessantly.
Yes.
And incessantly, I was already like primed to hate it. And I don't love the original Speak No Evil by any means. However, a movie that fatalistic and grim and provocative,
yes,
you just know that when they remake it for American audiences, they are going to sand off those edges.
Yes, that was my biggest complaint with it.
You just know that's going to happen. And yet, when I saw the Speak No Evil movie, I kind of had a blast with it. I thought it was really fun. I understand, and it does do that. It does sand off the edges. However, if this was just if that was a movie completely removed,
yes,
from its original, I mean, it's a great little, claustrophobic thriller with James McAvoy just hamming it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Which is very fun.
Yeah. I bet that I would have been a bit higher on the movie had I not watched the original beforehand, because you're right. That original, like, the tone is all not necessarily completely different, but it is wildly different. It's more grim, and like it has just like that just like icky feeling throughout it. And this one is more like a pressure cooker.
Yeah, and I think just because I don't have this, like, this wasn't like when they did Let Me In, that remake of like Let the Right One In, where like I loved Let the Right One In when that came out. When they're doing the remake, I was like, this is bullshit. Like, even if it's good, like this is unnecessary. I think because I thought the original Speaking of Evil was fine. That when they were doing this remake, I was just like, I don't care. Like, I'm not that invested in them doing this. And I had a blast with it. And James Watkins, just looking at his filmography, he's like just a journeyman director who makes above average thrillers. I mean, I'm looking, he did some Idris Elba movie called The Take, where Idris Elba is holding a gun. Yeah, I'm like, that looks pretty cool. Has pretty high ratings on Metacritic. He did Eden Lake, which is like a very nasty little foreign thriller.
Nice.
Back from the 2000s. So, he's a capable director. I think this horror-centric character study on Clayface is very cool. If you've ever seen any of the episodes about Clayface in the Batman animated series, there's a lot of potential there. Totally. And it also just gives me a lot of faith in James Gunn as somebody who is, I have a feeling this is going to be rated R. It's going to be an R-rated movie since it has such a low budget. And it gives me a lot of faith that James Gunn isn't trying to go hardcore MCU route of saying, all of these need to be of such a piece.
Right.
That they can't feel too tonally distinct from one another. Because we have, someone has to watch Ant-Man Quantumania and go, oh, this is the same movie. This takes place in the same universe as Iron Man 3, and
right.
That gives me a lot of hope, because for me, I don't really give a fuck about about the movies, how they're connected. I just want a good movie and a good story.
Totally.
So all of this just sounds like great news to me. I mean, James Watkins, like the Coen brothers, directing this. No, but I don't get that for a Clayface movie.
Sure.
I think I do the job. And Mike Flanagan, obviously writing the script. Very cool.
Yes, I totally agree. I'm very curious to see how it comes out. Like one of my things, in terms of like it being like a horror centric like character study, I think showcasing like the way that he showcased James McAvoy in Speak No Evil. Obviously that's a kind of role that James McAvoy has kind of played in the past in terms of just being like at like starting out at like 9 and then hitting 11 erratically. I think that like that is like the thing that sold them on getting James Watkins for this, because I feel like Clayface will be a pretty complex character study if they're going that route, and I think it needs that kind of touch. So I'm excited about it.
Do you think McAvoy will play Clayface?
That would be interesting. I would love it, honestly.
I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
I think that cool. I saw that rumor somewhere, but you know, that could have just been there because he was the star of Speak No Evil.
Yeah.
But I would be down for that. I think that would
absolutely
be a cool choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely someone that's accused occasionally of overacting, but I think he does it in a very entertaining way.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with it. I would love to see that. So yeah,
same.
I'm like more excited for that than like Batman the Brave and the Bold or whatever.
Oh, sure.
Know? Yeah, like these kind of weird, almost like experiments, you know, are much more compelling to me.
Yes, same.
Yeah, than kind of just being like the 15th Batman movie.
Oh, absolutely.
I love Batman. I want them to make those movies forever, but
yeah.
This sounds like something very different, which I'm excited for.
Same. Totally agree. And then the thing that I want to give the gotcha question for is it's also kind of another plug for Patreon. Severance season 2. They just aired the 6th episode of the season, and yes, and I've been reviewing it on Patreon and everything. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. But today, I believe I saw a message that you had typed, and you typed it out, and then you hit like the send button.
I did.
And it said something to the effect of, Matt Hurt is such a bitch. I hate him so much. And Severance season 2 has fallen off the cliff for me.
That first part I thought was going into a different group chat.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
So that was a mistake. But that second part, yes. Now, I think maybe I was a little hyperbolic. Maybe saying it's fallen off a cliff is a little intense.
Sure.
I think Ben Stiller is like a fantastic director. I mean, he's unbelievably skilled. You know, even going back to things like The Cable Guy and like Tropic Thunder. I mean, he's a great director. And when he started doing, he did that prison TV show, like Escape from.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but something. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Great show. Great show. And you know, something like Severance, I thought had a fantastic first season. And I was recommending the show to my dad, and I kind of pitched it to him, and I'm sure I'm not the only person to come up with this, but I pitched it to him as like, I was like, it's The Office meets Lost, you know? And,
that's a really good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's kind of how I pitched it to him. I'm like, it's kind of a workplace satire, but with like the mystery box elements of something like Lost. Now, a lot of people who I really respect, I think possibly including you, and
as someone who has this opinion, or someone that you maybe respect.
My former roommate Eric, shout out, one of the smartest, best people I know, has a tattoo of the map island on his arm. You know,
I love that
on his arm. So like a lot of people who I really love and respect are big fans of Lost.
Yes.
I kind of fell off. Now, this was back in high school, so I had dubious taste at best. But I remember at a certain point in high school and college where I kind of fell off, and a lot of that was probably just due to I was partying a lot and not watching as much TV. But
sure,
you know, I remember getting to a certain point where I go, okay, they just keep throwing another weird thing, and we're no longer like you're throwing so much at the wall that it's causing me to like disengage a little bit. You know, I think like maybe David Lynch can kind of pull that off.
Yeah.
There's like a few people who can pull that off for me. I think David Lynch can do it because you're kind of going in with like, well, this is all about the vibes. Like,
sure.
I know David Lynch is never going to provide me like a clear answer. And I felt like and I didn't even finish the episode, but I felt my interest waning a little bit this season. And the episode where they are, and I did not finish this episode, where they are climbing this mountain and they're lost in this giant forest area
in the Ortbo. Yeah,
I started to get the feeling we were going full Lost. You know, I kind of got this vibe that I'm like, okay, we're really going to drag this out for like a really long time, aren't we?
That's really interesting.
And I just am like, okay, like, I don't know why, but I just felt like the weirdness, we're just getting weirder and weirder, which I'm down for weird.
Yeah.
I love weird. But it didn't feel super coherent to me anymore. And it's almost like when a show starts doing that, maybe I just have like PTSD from Lost.
Sure.
But it starts to give me the sense that the filmmakers, and I could be completely off here, I would, you know, obviously admit to being wrong here, but it gives me the sense the filmmakers are like not sure where the show is heading. You know, so I just kind of was getting vibes of Lost, and I was like, okay, I'm watching these people like wander around this giant winter landscape. Like, we're so far removed from like what made this show good for me. For me, what I love is when the show is kind of commenting more on like corporate America things, and like relationships between the characters. And I am interested in the overall mystery, but I think it's focusing too much on the puzzle box, the mystery box, what is it? What is going on?
Yeah,
you know?
That's totally fair.
Yeah, that's me. I'm gonna jump back into it, but my wife Devin and I were like watching that episode, and we're like, I'm gonna watch something else.
Oh dang, that's so crazy, because that was like
something else.
That was like an episode where I was like, oh my god, this is like they're kicking it into gear. This is like wild. Especially
I can totally respect that too, like because you're like, wow, like where did this come from?
Yeah, and I totally get the Lost kind of connection there, but it's interesting because I made the connection to Lost with the previous episode when they're going to the other department where the goats, where Gwendolyn Christie is, because I was like, that feels so much like Lost.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'm loving this season, and for the listeners, I'm reviewing it on Patreon. Like I said, like those are like hour-long just episodes of me talking nonsense about it. But anyway, it's so interesting that, because it is very much like Lost. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around the whole like Office meets Lost, because that is just absolutely perfect. Even in like, there's an episode, there's a scene where a character, like the wardrobe of the character, in one of the episodes that you haven't seen yet, I'll gender her. She is dressed exactly like the exact wardrobe as a character from The Office in one scene, in one episode of The Office. And it's like, can't be a coincidence. And I mumbled my way through how to rationalize that in my recording for Patreon, but it's really interesting. Like, I think they're aware of that. And I've heard that they've said that they're like deep into season 3, like they know how, like they're working it out and everything. So I don't know. Hopefully you get back into it and like it.
And to the show's credit, like, you know, it's a very easy offhand way to describe the show if you're recommending it to somebody, like The Office meets Lost, but it does feel very much like distinctly its own thing and its own vision, which I give Ben Stiller like all the credit in the world, and that first season was just phenomenal. Yeah. But rather than kind of focusing on that, I think just personally, just a taste thing, like the elements that were interesting to me the most, we seem to be kind of shifting away from that in terms of just like upping the strange mystery of like what's going on with this Neiman is the guy who Lumen. Sorry. Like what's up with Lumen? What, like who is the guy behind this? Like, how does the company work? Like, what's all these things? And that to me is just like not as interesting, especially like an episode where people are just like trudging through the snow for like somehow, and there's this endless wasteland. I'm like, okay, so they can do anything. Like, there's no rules anymore. Like anything can happen. So, and that's kind of how I felt too. Like with Lost, where it's just like, okay, like we can just throw any kind of wild shit in here. And like, all right, we have a polar bear here. Like, why not,
That's fair. I loved Lost from beginning to end, and I'm loving Severance. So I don't know.
I would love to Lost another shot. I would love.
Oh yeah. Did you ever finish it?
No, I said, I kind of fell off. But again, I was like 16.
Sure.
I mean, I think I'd like to at least think like my tastes have broadened a bit, and I think I'd be a little more open-minded to, like a show kind of doing something very out there. Where at the time, like it kind of no pun intended, it kind of lost.
Sure. That's interesting. So you'll have to report back and let me know what you think of Severance when you continue it. But speaking of continuing it, shall we continue with this episode and go into our feature review of The Monkey?
Let's do it.
All right. So once again, for the listeners, we are going to be reviewing The Monkey, which is in theaters now. It was released in theaters on February 21st. And of course, we're going to do a non-spoiler review and then spoiler review. I'll play a clip from the trailer once we get to spoilers. If you want to navigate around that, go to the show notes of this episode for timestamps. Those show notes are also available at obsessiveviewer.com/OV468. And the premise for The Monkey, according to IMDb, is when twin brothers Bill and Hal find their father's old monkey toy in the attic, a series of gruesome deaths start. The siblings decide to throw the toy away and move on with their lives, growing apart over the years. Director for this movie was Osgood Perkins, and writer was Osgood Perkins as well, based on the short story by Stephen King, which I believe was in the Skeleton Crew collection. And I have Patreon reviews of that as well. The cast includes Theo James, Tatiana Maslany, Christian Convery, Colin O'Brien, Elijah Wood, Rohan Campbell, Sarah Levi, and Osgood Perkins. Mitch, what did you think, in non-spoilers, about The Monkey? How'd you feel about The Monkey?
Well, I'll preface it a little bit by saying that Stephen King's Skeleton Crew short story collection was I would say, along with Clive Barker's Books of Blood, those two short story collections were like definitive short story collections in my upbringing, in my middle school, early high school years. I cannot tell you how many times I've probably read the story, The Monkey, along with basically every other story in that book. I mean, I absolutely love that collection. I have it right there on my shelf. I'm looking at it.
Nice.
Same copy from 20 years ago or whatever. And,
God, I love that.
So I'm prefacing saying like, love Stephen King. Probably not as much as our gracious host, Matt Hurt, but I am a big Stephen King fan. Have read a lot of Stephen King.
TowerJunkiesPod.com.
A lot of his pre-2000s work, especially. I'm very familiar with. Oz Perkins is somebody who I think is like a incredibly talented filmmaker. I don't know if there's any of his movies up until The Monkey where I was like, wow, masterpiece, this is a great film. But the potential is certainly there. He's got a great visual eye. I think it's kind of in the writing department where his stories kind of get a little wobbly. Maybe get a little wobbly, but he's got a lot of potential. So him adapting the monkey, even though the story is, there's not enough in that short story to really warrant a full film. So I was curious, like, he was going to pad that out, how he was going to kind of, maybe I should say more like flesh that out into, you know, length film. You know, but obviously my hopes were sky high. I thought the trailer looked really great. And yeah, once again, Neon doing a great job marketing this movie. And I liked it. I found it to be pretty good. I would be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit disappointed.
Interesting.
Both to its credit and you know, to a fault. I think this is one of the weirdest, like tonally, this is one of the weirdest movies I've seen in theaters.
Oh yeah.
In time.
Yep.
I knew there would be some dark comedy, just kind of gory, Final Destination style, like splat stick humor. What I didn't expect was this movie is almost like an Adult Swim style, like absurdist comedy. Like this is a cartoon. Like the characters in this world are cartoonish. The setting is cartoonish. There are so many odd, bizarre details and non sequiturs that fill up this movie in a way that you go, oh, this is more of a comedy than it is a horror film. And I thought the things that were very effective about this movie were the gory set pieces were very awesome.
Yes.
The look of the movie, I do love. I mean, this is kind of the only thing Oz Perkins does, but I do love his like 1970s sort of retro feel for his movies, even when they don't take place in that time.
Right.
Have this kind of film grain look to them, which I do think is very effective. The guy knows how to compose a shot. I think that the humor, I love the swing. This is so tonally different. There's a little bit of dark humor in Long Legs and his other movies, but I mean, I love how just balls out goofy he's going for in this movie.
Yes.
I love that he's going for it. I found the comedy here very hit or miss.
Okay.
I found it just kind of inconsistent. There were some real duds, I thought, in some of the comedic beats here, and some really hilarious ones as well. But I just think for every time I was laughing in the movie theater, there was also one where I was like, ooh, like cringe a little.
Sure.
And to give you some non-spoiler examples of some stuff that didn't quite work I think all of the death set pieces, hilarious, really nailed the tone. I think a lot of the performances really nail the tone. I think Theo James, he really is a capable actor. You know, handling all this dialogue. I think that like there's some scenes like early in the movie with like Theo James's character and his twin brother, and there's a scene after a funeral where their mother is talking to them, and the mother is like, yeah, people die in all kinds of horrible ways, and she's describing all of these gruesome deaths and giving them a very fatalistic view on life, right? She's speaking in a very grim and matter-of-fact way to a child, right? And like that's, you know, and the joke is just like, haha, like a mom shouldn't say this to her kid. And it's something like that didn't quite. There's a lot of like little bits like that. Just felt like they were trying a little too hard. Is how I would put it. There's also another detail where, for example, we walk away from a very gruesome crime scene, and as Theo James' character walks out of this house, which is now surrounded by townspeople, right, who are kind of spectating. There's police, ambulance, right? All the neighbors are sort of, speculating what happened. We see a group of fully dressed cheerleaders, high school cheerleaders, pom-poms, everything, and they're doing like a chant. And I think, somebody like the recently deceased, like David Lynch, could kind of put in an inexplicable, odd detail.
Sure.
Where the image is so striking and uncanny that it affects you. You go, oh, that's eerie. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't need to. It just shows us, how chaotic this world is, or how strange, worldly this whole situation is. When Oz Perkins would do it in like this movie, details like that, it just felt like he was just kind of like, wouldn't this be weird? Like, what if I had these theaters? That would be weird, right? And it's like, yeah, that is weird, but to what effect?
Yeah,
like,
why?
But then, like I said, I appreciate that he's going for it, and I thought as a whole, the movie was very entertaining. It really delivers on all the gore. Where the film ultimately goes, where a kind of villain is sort of revealed, like a human villain, not the monkey toy.
Yeah.
I found that very interesting. But I just thought it was kind of uneven. And I do think that the movie also near the end tries to kind of hit these emotional beats in a way that I think everything about these characters before that moment is so cartoonish and heightened and over the top that all of a sudden, when the movie's trying to tell us, well, but actually there's like some real grounded themes here and some human relationships and drama at play, it just doesn't really land, because you're like, well, you've never had any kind of gravitas like up until this moment.
Right.
Death has been treated as nothing but just like a goofy, random occurrence. So I don't know. I think the movie was attempting a lot, and I just don't think it quite got there. But I'll wrap it up by saying I would rather have see a hit or miss B- movie to me. Like, that's kind of like a B- than just kind of like a middle of the road, forgettable horror movie, like any day of the week. I do think Oz Perkins remains a really great director. I'll continue to kind of turn out for his stuff. I was a little disappointed. I felt like he didn't quite have the formal command, and kind of the Coen brothers once said that directing is tone management. That's what they call directing is tone management. And I would say this movie kind of lacked, I think, in tone management.
Interesting.
So yeah, Matt, I'd be very curious, what a Stephen King head like you thought. Although this is not really very reminiscent of the Stephen King story at all.
No, not at all. It's been a while since I've read The Monkey. Probably a couple of years, if not 3 years or more. And just eyeing the summary for the short story on Wikipedia, I'm like, yeah, this is nothing like the short story. And that's part and parcel with adapting a short story anyway. Especially with short fiction from King, there's he has ideas, and the short stories are kind of in some respects are kind of just playing around with those ideas. I think mostly because of his style of writing is that he's very just kind of go with the flow sort of writing, not really outlining or anything. So I think that when he has an idea for a story, he'll write it out, and if it's not something that could be novella or novel length, he can kind of just play around with the concept in a short story fashion and then put it in a collection. And so with that, I think that his short stories are very adaptable in some interesting ways. And that's one thing that I really, really liked about The Monkey, was that it is a wildly unexpected tone for me, that dark comedy, that very heightened, absurd comedy, the incredibly over the top gore splatter stuff was just an absolute blast. And yeah, some of it didn't really land for me. Also, I will say the cheerleader thing, that it worked for me. I thought it was just so out of left field, so weird, and it is something that I could see myself having issues with or not really connecting with on repeat viewings because it was so unexpected that maybe the unexpected nature is worn off if I rewatch it. But like in the moment, I was like, this was so unexpected that it got me to laugh in the theater. And that's kind of the magic of the movie for me, is that like those death scenes, those like big set pieces, like the shock of that is it's such cartoonish violence, and it's so unexpected, like at every turn, in terms of the level to which bodies are completely dismembered or disintegrated or otherwise just completely manipulated in grotesque ways. It's so unexpected at every turn that it elicits like that laugh response out of me, that the haha, I'm in danger sort of response. It's just like it was a very fun ride for me. But I do completely agree that when it gets to those heavier themes later in the movie, I do feel like it doesn't stick the landing quite as well as it should have. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of Longlegs in that respect also, because Longlegs in its third act was kind of like a rush to the finish. And this was kind of a similar thing in terms of identifying what's really going on, or what's going on with it, and figuring out how to kind of like land that as a dramatic moment in a movie that's been so absurd, so over the top, so like crazy. It doesn't really mesh well. So I agree with you on that, but I enjoyed the ride throughout it though. And like those like little like issues didn't really affect my enjoyment of it, because it was a blast the whole time. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those movies, when I talk about it, I sound probably more negative than I actually am on the movie. I felt the same way about Longlegs too. Like when I was talking about it, I sound more negative than I am, because I think Oz Perkins is one of those filmmakers that is so clearly talented, but I just think that like he falls short in some like pretty key ways for me. But like that's like something like The Monkey too, I do think I overall enjoyed, because even when some of the humor fell flat for me, like didn't land, it's for the most part, it's so goofy and doesn't take itself seriously that you're kind of just along for like the ride, you know, like, you know, the movie's not, the movie is just there to be a fun and goofy time. And, you know, it does have some like a couple interesting themes, or maybe one interesting theme of just kind of like death in general is gross, random, often surprising, right? I mean, it's awful to think about, but like, what can you do but just sort of laugh, you know, right. Because it is inevitable and just comes for us all. And, you know, you think of people who die in freak accidents or just a car crash or something every day, very unexpectedly. And it's, you know, there is something almost unnatural feeling about it, right? Like when someone's body is vaporized to goo, you know, and you go, oh, right, we are just kind of ants in this, you know, on this planet. And we are still beholden to like the laws of nature and just random happenstance that can just erase our existence in a second. Yep. And it's a bleak and terrifying thought. But so to kind of take like a comedic approach, I do think that's interesting. And this movie does that well. So I guess I saw the potential for more, you know, and I also think those kind of emotional beats it tries to hit at the end, I don't think it was really necessary. Like we didn't really need to try to go there. Yeah. I was doing just fine in the movie kind of without that.
Same. And I do appreciate him going for it in terms of kind of closing the gap on some of the themes that had been hinted at, like you said, the one theme or the two themes, like things like generational trauma or like estrangement, familial estrangement, stuff like that. I appreciated the way that it handled that. But something that I want to kind of like, it's maybe a slight tangent, but there was a tweet or something that was something to the effect of, like, it's so weird. Like Osgood Perkins, when you see him, does not seem like the kind of guy to make these dark and weird, like, horror movies and stuff. And then you realize, like, well, his father died from AIDS complications, and his mother died on a plane in 9/11. And like, I didn't know that I knew that he was Anthony Perkins' son. I didn't know that Anthony Perkins was gay and went through like conversion therapy and got married and everything, and eventually died of AIDS complications. And I had no idea about his mother. On one of the planes. Like, that's crazy. And it's like, I wonder how much of that goes into his art. I'm sure plenty, or if that was just a cheeky tweet that someone twatted.
Well, it's almost even more disturbing in a way that this is a guy who, like, his own mother died in like a crazy, horrible accident of random happenstance, you know, of 9/11. I know it's ridiculous to kind of reduce it to that.
Yeah.
But, you know, she got on a plane like it was like any other, you know, day, right? And she died horribly, and
it even has that line in the movie that like a character says that their like grandparent or something said.
In this movie too.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, they're like, anytime there was a mass casualty, they would say that, oh, God's Bolin strikes or something like that.
Yes,
which I thought that was interesting.
No, it is very interesting. It is very interesting, and yeah, I mean, he's a really strong director, and it is very cool to see him kind of stretching his legs like this. And I do really appreciate too that he took kind of this, honestly, like, I loved this story when I was a kid, but I think if I read it now for the first time, I'd probably be like, this feels like a story Stephen King wrote in 15 minutes. Like,
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Like, bad, but it's just like, you know, just like, oh, like, what?
Yeah,
you know, what if there was a monkey when it crashed a cymbal, people died, you know?
I mean, honestly, like, it's also a story, like, not to get in the weeds about the story or anything, but like, it's a story that King also sort of improved upon in a future story, I think. I can't remember which collection it was in, but it was Chattery Teeth. That short story. I want to say
Midnight.
No, that one was in that was in Nightmares and Dreamscapes. Chattery Teeth is about a like a chattery teeth toy that kills people.
Yeah, I loved that one because that had the one where there's like people are like trying to quit smoking and they can see vampires.
The 10 o'clock people.
Oh, that was one of, what a wild concept, but
absolutely.
I absolutely loved that one as a kid.
Yes, I need to bring back Tower Junkies. God damn it!
Yeah, put me on Tower Junkies. I would love to reread some stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, there are like his short stories can be kind of slight, like I said, to kind of just an idea. But that's kind of the magic of Stephen King. And I like that that's what makes him so adaptable with translating to film and TV, even though a lot of it is kind of garbage.
Yeah, he's. I will say that this is on the better end of Stephen King adaptations that we get, and not to get too off track here before we get into spoilers, but it's cool to see something like this kind of take liberties with the story in such a way, because you certainly would not expect. Like, I did not expect this would be the tone that they would take, but it makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Kind of funny. We're also getting a Final Destination movie this year as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
And like, this is like as good of a Final Destination movie as I've ever seen.
Oh, I agree completely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting if that can top this.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is. This is one of the better ones we've gotten in recent memory, and I think that we could have a whole Stephen King, Patreon discussion about this. But
yes,
why is it so hard to make a good Stephen King adaptation? Because you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's because
why is it so hard?
Yeah, it's because people take the concept of it and then they make that the scary story. They make that they think it's just a scary story because of the concept. Like, oh, a monkey is killing people. Let's make that a horror movie where the monkey's the villain. But no, like instead, this is a bad example because the story doesn't really delve into that or anything. But like this is like in keeping with the spirit of Stephen King. It's like, yeah, we're exploring like connections between people and falling out and having like family issues and stuff against the backdrop of all of this death and destruction and dismemberment and everything. And that's the magic sauce for Stephen King. And that's why like Mike Flanagan and Frank Darabont are masters of their craft at adapting King. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And I think, something like Dr. Sleep, which is probably the best one I can remember in recent memory, understands that Stephen King is kind of a sentimental guy. He's a big old softy, and the characters come first. And unfortunately, I think some of the more recent adaptations that actually do kind of seemingly take the right approach of making these faithful adaptations and making them character based, end up coming off as very generic.
Sure.
Some that come to mind are the Pet Sematary remake from a few years ago.
Yes.
And the Salem's Lot movie that we got.
I still haven't even seen that. I saw it.
Yeah. Couldn't even saw it, reviewed it. Couldn't even tell you a single scene in the movie.
I'll put a link to Mitch's review in the show notes of this episode.
So I just think that, I think a lot of them that kind of take this like, oh, hey, we're going to try to faithfully adapt the novel and like talk about, and portray the characters faithfully and all that. A lot of them just, they don't have that sauce. They don't have that. Yeah. They don't come off as sort of generic. And you know what? This doesn't really have a lot of strong character work. If anything, I think another complaint I might have about this movie, of maybe why the humor didn't work as well, is there aren't really any characters in this movie. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Our main character has a little bit, like, we know he's a bit of a fuck up. And we know that he doesn't have a strong, I don't think this is a spoiler, he doesn't have a strong relationship with his son. Right. Which is, all of those details felt very random and kind of shoehorned in. They're like, by the way, he has a kid who doesn't like him. What? I kind of feel like part of that is maybe they spent a little too much time with their childhood in the 90s. Like that kind of stretched pretty long. And I didn't have too much of a problem with that per se, but like, suddenly we're getting like 25 years later and like we're catching up. Like, yeah, I get that he has a son and everything, but like it's implied, or like it's pretty much in the story that like, yeah, he's scared of connecting with people, I guess. And then I'm just like, well, how did, like, if that's the case, why does he have a kid? I don't know. That just didn't feel, that just didn't feel, like, it just didn't feel of a piece with the character. Like I didn't quite find it very believable. Now, I think the scene where we meet his kid's like new stepfather, that was a very like, I think a lot of this really absurdist comedy sort of lives and dies by the actors speaking it. I think the child, and I hate to bag on a child actor because they're kids, but I think Oz Perkins kind of puts a lot on those child actors in the beginning. And I don't think they can quite handle the kind of the goofy dialogue and kind of purposely stilted, interaction. Whereas you see someone like Elijah Wood in this movie, and he's nailing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Perfectly get it. So, yeah.
It's interesting too that there are dual roles in this movie. So Theo James plays both Hal and Bill as adults, but I didn't notice this until I was looking through the cast list. Christian Convery plays both the young versions of the twins. Like, it's a dual role for the kids too, and that's also adding more to his plate to kind of really sell that. And I don't think I agree with you. The performance there for both roles was kind of a little bit lost there, but also I feel like it's a little bit underwritten because like we get this weird like subplot with Hal being bullied at school by a group of girls. And then like, we can kind of talk more about that in spoilers, but it kind of comes to a head with him saying like, this is all Bill's fault. And I'm like, wait, how? Like, I'm not sure how A gets to Z there.
Yeah, we should talk about that in spoilers because I agree kind of the anger he has towards his brother. Let's
we'll talk about that in spoilers. And we can kind of wind down in the non-spoiler section, but I did want to just say performances I thought were all pretty solid. I really liked Oz Perkins popping up as the uncle, and also that one scene that's in the trailer with the priest I thought was phenomenal in terms of the comedy. But the other thing I want to talk about, the tone and everything with the cheerleaders, it really felt like a cynic or someone criticizing the movie, such as Mitch, would say that it's like Oz Perkins saw Bottoms and was like, oh, this is what I want for the monkey. And like, that works for me. I think that worked pretty well for me.
I will say that, despite not thinking the movie entirely pulled it off, I do feel, because you mentioned Bottoms, but really Bottoms is just hearkening back to this kind of zany spoof style comedy that, was kind of at its peak with like the Zucker brothers and like The Naked Gun and things like that. And even, really died a painful death in the 2000s with like Epic Movie and all those Friedberg and Seltzer movies. But that said, I think it's such a style of comedy that is not seen very often outside of maybe just really weird Adult Swim TV shows,
right?
And even then, that's like almost this like anti-comedy version of it. But like, I think we don't see that kind of really goofy, over the top kind of like zany comedy where there's even like odd details in the background and things like that, like little visual gags, and everybody is kind of this exaggerated caricature. You just don't see a lot of that outside of maybe like David Wayne, but I mean, even he's not really active like he used to be.
Right. Yeah. Although we want him to be, because I love David Wayne so much.
Oh yeah. I know we both have a mutual love for They Came Together.
Yes, absolutely. You can say that again. But anyway, let's go into spoilers for the monkey before we get into David Wayne off. Before we get into spoilers, what did you rate the monkey, and where would you place it in you already said it, like the Stephen King adaptation space?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is on the upper end. I wish of recent Stephen King adaptations, I would say maybe firmly in the middle tier in terms of like, if like The Mangler was like the bottom tier and like, like Shawshank Redemption was like the top.
Sure.
Like right in the middle. But as of more recent, I would say, this is upper, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. I think this is like one of those cases where I'd be like 3.25.
Sure.
You know, like I'd give it the edge just for going for it. And there was a lot of humor that worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there's kind of just as much that didn't. So like I said, love Oz Perkins. Going for it. Very curious. I know he has another movie coming out like very soon.
Yeah, later this year, Keeper, which also was there. Like you didn't see it because it was you went to the early screening, but they have a post-credit like teaser for Keeper in theaters with the monkey, which I love that idea. I wish more people would do that. Given that this was a Neon movie, I would have really, really loved it if it was a Life of Chuck teaser. That would have been awesome.
I actually recently read that story for the first time.
Yeah, I think we talked about it, and
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I adore it. I adore it. So anyway, on that note, I rated it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. We'll see how it holds up to repeat viewings, but like I said, it is in theaters now. The Monkey in theaters now, and there's a post-credit scene. Just so you guys know, we're going to go ahead and go into spoilers for The Monkey. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. Once we come back, we're going to be spoiling The Monkey. If you want to navigate around spoilers, check the show notes for timestamps. Those are at obsessiveviewer.com/OV468, as well as in your podcast app right now. So with that, we're going to go into spoilers for The Monkey. Here's a clip from the trailer, and we will be back.
No, 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 no!
The coroner said it was an accident, but it was no accident. It was a monkey. When I was a kid, my twin brother and I found something that loved to kill. I did everything I could to make it go the fuck away. But it had other plans. Hello, brother.
Bill.
The monkey that likes killing our family. It's back. It must be vanquished.
Why don't you vanquish it, huh, Bill?
All right, so spoilers on for The Monkey. And Mitch, a couple of things that I forgot to mention in the non-spoiler section. One is that with it being a Stephen King adaptation, I really liked, and we heard a bit of that in the trailer, the kind of voiceover narration. And I liked that for a couple of reasons. One, it felt very much like a Stephen King kind of thing, having the character like describing their past and like getting us up to speed. That's really good. But also, as someone who is such a dork for audio stuff, just like the way that Theo James gives that vocal performance and the way that the sound is like engineered also, like it just feels so like rich and so like broadcasty, and it just feels like it just really, really tickled my brain in the best way. So I loved that element of the movie. So yeah. Did that tickle any part of your body?
Yeah, I was tickled. Well, nice. I was a little mixed on the voiceover. I immediately, the second that it started, I was like, okay, cool. Like I know exactly what you're doing. Like we're in Stephen King land. Like,
yeah.
We're in the Green Mile. We're in the Shawshank Redemption. We're in Stand By Me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these amazing uses of voiceover. I felt, first of all, typically the movies that use Stephen King voiceover have this very wistful tone and the wistful, nostalgic tone to them. And you know, I did like that they're using it to kind of describe the childhood, just like in a lot of those movies. Yeah. But I just found the delivery to be a little, like one note, a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't look. I can't explain it, but like Theo James just kind of, he's like a British actor, and there was something about his delivery where Do you know sometimes there's like a British? It sounds so stupid what I'm saying, but I gotta speak my truth.
Mhm.
You know, sometimes like when there's like a British actor and they're clearly speaking with this American accent and that's like very flat, like the delivery.
Yes.
That's kind of how I felt. There was something just kind of off about.
That's interesting.
Kind of reminds me of like Christian Bale when he's like Bruce Wayne in those movies.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, I am Bruce Wayne, you know? And you're like, this is like a British actor speaking in an American accent. Just like a nitpick, but for some reason it just felt off to me. And I'm part of me wonders if it was just because we mostly get that narration at the beginning of the movie. We don't get it's not consistent throughout the whole film.
Right.
And I would like to rewatch it again because I wonder if I'm just kind of imagining this complaint in my head, because I will say for the first 15 minutes of this movie, I was so caught off guard by how bizarre and goofy the tone of the movie was.
Yeah.
I was like, am I hating this or am I loving it? You know, like,
Yeah.
I was so just, I was like, it was, and that's what I said at the beginning of this review. And I was like, this is one of the weirdest movies I've seen in theaters in a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly was taken aback by how strange the tone was. And I think because it wasn't, I think part of that is maybe because I wasn't finding the humor entirely successful.
Sure.
So I was just like kind of unsure what the director's intentions were. But once I got into the groove of what the movie was doing, especially once we got into present day, I was like, okay, I'm with this movie.
Okay.
Speaking of Severance, loved the Adam Scott cameo.
Me too. Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. I felt like and that's also interesting too. We'll get into that, but to go back to the voiceover, that's so interesting because I feel like that flat tone that you're describing is why I loved it. It just really keyed into to me when I was watching it. But the Adam Scott cameo, the opening scene, I was surprised because I literally, like, my plan was I was going to see the monkey and then I was going to watch this week's Severance, and like I had just recorded last week's review for Patreon, so like I'm very much in Adam Scott land right now, and it was a pleasant surprise to see him pop up, and a great way to bring us into the movie too, because like he plays that like harried, like crazed, nervous energy really well.
He does, and I mean, he's just one of those actors that if he pops up in anything, you're like, okay, the movie's already a little bit better.
Yes.
Because he's in this.
Absolutely.
Going all the way back to the classic Joseph Kahn film Torque, if you haven't seen that.
I have not, but I will have to add it to my list.
Yes, probably the ultimate Adam Scott cameo role. So
nice.
Check that one.
Nice. Yeah. Another thing that I forgot to mention in non-spoilers was I had heard that the reason that the monkey is a drummer instead of having the cymbals was because Walt Disney has the copyright. And I looked it up, and it's so interesting. Like it's on the trivia for IMDb, but basically, Disney owns the copyright for the monkey with the cymbal specifically because they used it in Toy Story 3, which was directed by Lee Unkrich, who is a massive Stephen King fan and loaded the movie with a ton of a sizable amount of Stephen King references, including like the pattern being the same as like the wallpaper being the same as the pattern of the carpet in The Shining, in Kubrick's The Shining. But like he included that as a reference to the monkey short story. So that's an interesting like kind of circle around it where it's like, they can't do it justice because, you know, that monkey is property of Disney now because of the short story.
I mean, that's just such a classic Disney move.
Oh, absolutely.
Course, just finding these little ways to make more money. And
yep.
When I saw that, I was not surprised at all. But No, I thought that was hilarious when I saw that, and it didn't even cross my mind until I read that, because I did think like the little drum thing. I was like, oh, that works.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's a nice little compromise.
yeah. I'm not a purist for it or anything. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
The real story has symbols.
Exactly.
Yeah, 1 star.
Yep.
I'm curious kind of what you thought of I actually really I was mixed on it, because I actually in some ways liked how the twin brother ended up being kind of almost like a super villain of sort. He has like his own layer, and
he has like his Mr. Glass moment.
Yes, and I kind of did appreciate. I'm like, okay, this is like very silly and over the top that he's like this like villainous figure pulling all of the strings,
or turning all the keys.
I thought, yes. Now I thought it wasn't exactly. I felt like the movie kind of wanted it to maybe be a little surprising, or maybe it would have worked better. But unfortunately, I just felt like as a kid, his character is so irredeemable and unlikable from the moment
absolutely
beat him.
Yeah.
so then at the end of the movie, now that we're in spoilers, when he kind of is like, hey, no, let's be brothers again, I love you. You're like, well, were they ever really good brothers ever?
Right.
Like, because I never got that sense. Like he seemed awful. So, so I think it twofold just kind of doesn't work. And one, the sense that like all of a sudden this movie's kind of going for something a little more heartfelt in a movie that's just not the tone at all up until that point.
No.
And two, that we're expected to feel sympathy for a character who is completely
has committed mass murder.
And has committed mass murder, and just everything is awful. And I was curious that you kind of were mentioning like his reasons for wanting to kill his brother. Yes.
So like it's the blueprint of the movie is interesting enough, where it's like, Hal wished that Bill would be dead, and that's what inadvertently led to their mother dying, which I thought was a great sequence. I thought that was disturbing and like tragic. Yeah. And I also liked how Bill kind of processed that, and like you see him like keeping the funeral suit on so that he can, because he's like, if I ever take it off, that means I'll have to put it back on for the next funeral. I thought that was really good characterization for him. But I feel like because the movie spends so much time in their childhood, and like by design, the script does not have them together past the childhood, because until the end of the movie, by design, like that creates this like it is I don't know if I would say it's a very obvious twist or anything, but it was like something that when it happened, where it's like, oh yeah, Bill is doing all this so that he wants the monkey to kill Hal as revenge for their mother's death. I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, why didn't you just go and fucking shoot him? Like, I just like, it's like, okay. And like the movie, it does the same thing that Oz Perkins does with Longlegs, in that it over explains the final act. Like when we see Bill, when we see that Bill is the person that like has the Mrs. Monkey phone line or whatever that is, and he is like that's what the reveal is. Like, he's basically like telling the monkey, like, you need to kill my brother because he killed my mother. And it's like, yeah, let that kind of come about organically in the script. Like, we don't need it all up front in that moment before the finale. And then it also does feel like a little, like, I'll cop to it. I really like the end of that, all of that, with them having that like sincere moment of like, oh, we'll be brothers, we'll actually be a family and everything. And then boom, his head just gets completely obliterated by the bowling ball, which
that was hilarious.
That was great.
The eyeball on each side of the bowling
ball.
So good. Like, falling.
So freaking
this
good.
movie has some of the most spectacular gore of the year.
Absolutely.
And I loved how most of it felt very practical.
Mhm.
And even just scenes like that where there's a little bit of CG gore,
Yeah.
it's a nice mix of the
Mhm.
two.
Like
also
the
just
bees. Yeah.
Okay, I was literally about to say that.
Oh, nice,
Like,
nice.
that was the other kill that I was like, Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Amazing kill. And then like I thought that was fantastic. So
Mhm.
and another kind of weird moment that worked for me, although I mean it's because it was just so weird, was like when he sees like death on the horse at the end.
Yeah.
I that was like one of those inexplicable things that
Yeah.
did kind of work for me, because it did come from some place of logic of like, oh, well, like there's mass carnage because the monkey went crazy on its cymbals.
Right.
Little drum solo, and there's like, there's like planes crashing and everything. I thought that was like a cool, eerie, like moment of,
Yeah.
kind of moment. So I liked overall where the movie ended up.
Mhm.
And I did appreciate kind of just like the comic booky vibe of the brother, like you said, the Mr. Glass moment.
Yes.
The brother kind of just perched in his lair with all these, crazy traps. Yes, you're right. I didn't even think about that, but why does he need the monkey to do this? He just,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the more we talk about it, the more it's like, I still love the movie. I still really enjoy the movie. I still rate it 4 stars, but I am aware of its faults. But I just had such a good time with it that I'm fine with how it ended up. I do wish that it had more of that heart to it, or it had more of that kind of sympathy for the characters and empathy for the characters, that it wanted to infuse it with sentimentality at the end. But also that's also in service of the punchline that, if it was super sincere, if it was super like sentimental, and we actually cared about the characters, we actually cared about their relationship being repaired, then like we would maybe not laugh out loud when his head explodes from the bowling ball. So
yes, no,
yeah.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And honestly, like the more we talk about it, like the more I do find myself like, I mean, and I am warm on the film, like because like I really do want to praise like something that like this, like it's very original in the tone that it's going for. It's absolutely bonkers. And is it a little bit of a mess tonally? Sure, but it is. This is a cool and very unique movie, and it doesn't skimp on the gore. Loved that. Just the trailer was so good, and I loved when I was watching the movie, and I was like, oh, the trailer didn't even show all the best kills.
Right. Oh yeah.
Which is great, because so often I feel like that can be the case.
Yes.
And it did not do that, so it didn't make me regret watching the trailer.
Same here. And I really loved like there was there's such a good variety to the different kills and the different like bits of gore in it. It's so like you've mentioned, like it's very reminiscent of like Final Destination, and there's like these intricacies to all of the setups and everything and the payoffs of them. But like there's such a variety to it that I was never bored with them. And like the best example of that, like the movie kind of like with Oz Perkins' character, Uncle Chip, like when they reveal like, oh yeah, he died in a hunting accident, and I'm like, oh, they're not going to show it? Like, what the hell? Like, that seems kind of cheap. Like everything else they've shown it. And like I started to think like, okay, maybe he's the director, he didn't want to be in makeup or anything. And then like they have a flashback of his body, just basically like they describe it as being like a cherry pie mashed in with a foot or something like that. And it's just gore, grisliness. It's a soup that it's disgusting and violent and beautiful.
Oh, yeah, amazing. With the woman, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, we're in spoilers, so it's fine. But I was like, I don't want to ruin it. But I was like, oh yeah. When the woman is, when the ant catches on fire,
yes,
and runs right into the post.
So good.
Yeah, just awesome gore. That was that. I will say that, like, but you know, it's just going for something different. So this is more just an observation than a criticism, which is like the. Something like what is cool about the Final Destination movies, the ones that are good, or, you know, quote unquote good,
right?
But the ones that are more effective,
I
think like something like Final Destination 1 or 2. There's these scenes where somebody walks into whatever they're walking under a construction site or something,
right?
And your eye is scanning the frame,
yes,
for like. Okay, what is the thing? And then, you know, they'll show you like a screwdriver on a counter, and you're like, oh, okay, they showed me that for a reason. Like, well, how is the screwdriver going to factor into this? This didn't quite have that. This was kind of going for something different, because like there wasn't like a lot of. I didn't feel like there was a lot of tension. Like this wasn't really trying to be like tenseful. This is more like, I think I used earlier. I was like, I guess a lot of people use the term like splat stick to like describe like Evil Dead movies. Yeah. And I felt like this was kind of in that realm, you know what I mean? Where it's like, where it's, where it's kind of really playing them for comedic effect. And I did miss a little bit of like that tension that the Final Destination movies give us, but, you know, these kills are like as good as anything in those movies. So I'll take it. It's just an interesting how different the approach is here. Yeah,
I totally agree. It's interesting too, because I didn't really piece this together too much until like we've been talking about it. But the Adam Scott of it all, he left the family like suddenly without notice. No one knows where he went or anything. He never comes back. He's only in that first scene. And just something like I'm just putting together in my brain, like I like the idea that he successfully escaped by abandoning his family, but like at some point one of the turns of the key that Bill does just kills him, like just random, like, and they'll never know.
Yes.
I like that idea. So
good movie, very fun. I would recommend this to somebody who's maybe looking for something a little more off the beaten path.
Yes,
with a horror movie. This isn't necessarily like a coworker recommendation,
right?
But you know, maybe like your friend's friend.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to be recommending this to my coworkers because I've been there less than a year, and I want to make sure that they know I'm weird as fuck.
Yeah. I do hate when a coworker finds out I'm really into movies and like, what was your favorite movie last year? And you're like, The Substance.
Right. Oh, what's that?
I'd be like, don't watch it.
Yeah, no.
Like I need to have a better idea of who you are before I just recommend something like that to you.
Exactly. All right. Well, any final thoughts on The Monkey, or shall we close down this review?
Let's close her down.
All right. Well, once again, Mitch rated it 3 stars on Letterboxd. Yeah. And I rated it 4. Of course, you can follow Mitch at wounded_kite on Letterboxd. And let's get into the secondary review. Are you ready to go, Mitch?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. So we're going to go ahead and go into our secondary review for Grand Theft Hamlet. But actually, before I do that, let me read this whole spiel. So before we get to our secondary review, I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel as well, where I have some videos posted there and some live streams of podcasts and stuff. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use the promo code OBSESS when you sign up for a new account. You'll get up to 2 months free depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that in the show notes of this episode. And now back to the show.
They tell me I view obsessively.
Go. Yes. Go. Let's do it now. Okay. We are putting on a production of Hamlet in GTA Online for the first time ever. We are looking for actors, so come and audition. Please try to stop us. You can't stop our Oh. They got me. Oh my god, they're really coming down now, look.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
All right, and for tonight's secondary review, we're going to be sharing our thoughts on Grand Theft Hamlet, which is available on PVOD and on MUBI. It was released on streaming on February 21st, 2025, and had a theatrical run on January 17th, 2025. And also, if you heard... which episode was that? One of the episodes of the podcast recently with Nick, he talked about it in, I think it was OV463. Yes, 463, the Wolfman review. Anyway, Grand Theft Hamlet, the premise, according to IMDb, is two struggling actors find solace from lockdown isolation by staging Hamlet in Grand Theft Auto Online, battling griefers as they connect through William Shakespeare. Writers and directors for this documentary were Sam Crane and Penny Grills, and the cast includes Sam Crane, Mark Oosterveen, Penny Grills, and Jen Cohn. So, Mitch, this is a documentary told completely in the world of Grand Theft Auto Online. How did you feel about the doc? And of course, we're going to do non-spoilers.
Yeah, of course. Well, I was kind of primed to like this as somebody who has spent many an hour, especially as a young kid, preteen in the 2000s. Although I have played the newest one as well.
Mm-hmm.
But someone who spent many an hour playing Grand Theft Auto and kind of navigating that world, as well as an English major and a former English teacher who's read Hamlet and plenty of Shakespeare many times as well. I was pretty primed to like this. Nice. And I did. I liked it.
Nice.
It was. I found it to be very enjoyable. So I actually watched this. I put this on with my wife, who had no idea what the hell I was putting on, or what we were going to be watching. And we started, and she's never played Grand Theft Auto in her life. And she was like, "What is this?" And then you learn pretty quickly like what they're trying to do. And I'm like, "This is all about that. We're going to put on a Hamlet play in the world of Grand Theft Auto." And she just started cracking up. So I was like, okay, even someone uninitiated finds this concept very amusing, and it is.
Yes,
I thought the documentary spoke very well to some cool themes about making art. Now, if I had to kind of give a slight against it, I don't think any of these themes are necessarily things that I've never thought of before or haven't heard from other people. But that like the creation of art is really a little bit of a miracle in the sense that you have to get all of these people at the same time to cooperate and work towards this vision, and how difficult that actually is. To be on the same page with somebody. And you could kind of apply that to so many different things. You apply that to like cooking in a kitchen, making a film, obviously putting on a play, anything, right? It's this communal effort, and also like the creation of art on a larger scale, right? When it's involved with multiple people and different resources. Often the making of that art is comprised of a lot of mundane tasks of just kind of figuring out the practicality of making that, and so on like that level, I thought that was really cool, like a really cool demonstration of those themes. I did find, if I had any complaints against it, I guess I would say it's like, it's a very unique delivery of kind of like timeless universal themes. And I think that the movie really delivers on the novelty of its premise, but I don't think it necessarily like did anything beyond that to where I felt like my mind was was blown. I was just like, wow, that's a really unique and fun idea for a documentary. And I do think some moments of the documentary, I would be so curious to hear your thoughts about this specifically. But some moments felt a little contrived.
I had the same thought. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like call the authenticity of the documentary into play or anything, but there's kind of some relational strife that happens between, the subject of the documentary and his girlfriend who's helping. It's his girlfriend, right? Not his wife.
I think so. I think it's his girlfriend.
They live together.
They live together. Yeah.
There's some kind of strife that felt like it sort of came out of nowhere. And it almost felt like we were at this point where, and again, I could be totally off base, but it felt a little contrived. It felt like the documentary was like, well, we need to have some conflict at this part.
It kind of felt that way for me too. And
we're
like
gonna enter conflict.
Yeah. And like, I respect if that is the case, or if that was a genuine, authentic thing. Like either way, I respect what it is saying, because it is a movie, it is a documentary about, isolation and COVID lockdown and all of that. But like, it's also just like that, like what calls it into question for me, or it doesn't even call it into question, because I'm not like going to like come down one way or the other on the authenticity of it. But like the thing that makes me feel like it's a reach for me to have emotional resonance with it is that they know they're making a documentary. They know that they're using footage from the game, like, and I respect the vulnerability of it, like to have that relationship conversation in game with each other. But like, just like, it feels like, well, like, go to the next room. Like, don't have that conversation.
There.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like something that happened in game.
Yeah.
So there was some stuff like that felt a little contrived to me. I think the movie is at its best when it's sort of celebrating, where it's like this celebration of Shakespeare and like the spirit of putting on a play, as well as almost a love letter to the chaotic and ridiculous nature of Grand Theft Auto, and kind of in its own way, how it's sort of a beautiful world that's created of like limitless possibilities and imagination in there. And I think that's so perfectly summed up in one single image in the movie. That might be the single best image in the movie, which is when I believe it's a pivotal moment in Hamlet, and I want to say it's the to be or not to be speech, or it's Hamlet's death.
Okay.
But I think it's Hamlet's death, where in the background we see the alien guy thrusting and humping right behind him as Hamlet's death is being spoken. And I thought that was like just a perfect summation of like everything great about what this movie is trying to do.
Yes.
Where it's such a silly and ridiculous setting that grants so much creativity and off the wall thinking, right? Where like anything is kind of possible, even putting on a Hamlet production.
Yeah.
Even though it also has plenty of limitations, that world, right?
Right.
But I thought that was just such a great like marriage of like summation of like the marriage of these two wildly disparate art forms. So the movie was good. I wonder, I kind of went into it with very high expectations, because a lot of the people I followed on Letterboxd were like 4.5 out of 5 stars, 4 stars. It was just rave reviews, and this would not have like made my top 10 of last year or anything. But, this was a really good documentary, and one side note, I don't really think this is a knock against the film, but I was looking at some just user reviews for this movie online, just kind of scrolling through, and there were a lot of the negative reviews for this movie said that they were like, there are YouTubers on they're YouTubers who do things 10 times crazier than this and harder than this on a regular basis.
Oh yeah.
Like, this is not impressive.
Wow.
If you are, like the things that have been pulled off in open world video game settings like this, there are way crazier things. And I guess to that I say, like, I don't think that really affects my enjoyment of this movie because it feels like the effort from these people was really there. And to me, I'm not a part of that world and community of like YouTube gamers. So to me, this was pretty cool. I could maybe see if you were really invested in kind of the YouTube gaming world and all these streamers, I could see maybe the sort of anguish that went into staging this production might seem a little like a little dumb, but I didn't feel that way. I thought it was really cool. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't feel that way either. I can definitely, now that you mention it, I can definitely see that being a thing that could be a point of contention for people who aren't filthy casuals like us to watch it because they're like the movie, like one of them at least emphasizes like, this is the first time this has ever been done. This is the first time it's ever been done. And it's like, okay, sure. Yeah. But do you know that? Because, and this is also just me being a snob who's played like Grand Theft Auto 5, like a lot. Never really played online. I've just free roamed by myself, which is a whole other thing. But like, I'm just like, okay, you're really saying that this is the first time it's ever happened and you didn't even know where the Vinewood Bowl was? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But that was the other thing that I really liked about it was like, I was afraid that like when they found that amphitheater, I thought like, are they going to just do like a production of Hamlet on this stage? Like that's going to be kind of boring, but they don't. They go different places. They do different things. And as far as like, I mean, there are better like works of art that deal with these like similar themes and the lockdown feeling as well, because like Bo Burnham's Inside for me is like the quintessential like COVID lockdown piece of art, basically. That
it's incredibly impressive.
Oh yeah, that just hammers home like the feeling, the like anguish of COVID and the pandemic. So like this doesn't nearly get to that level, obviously, but there is a lot of really interesting stuff with just the fear and the loneliness, the isolation. There's some interesting stuff there, but then again, there's also like last year, the Incredible Life of Evelyn. That documentary is similar to this in that it's about a man who found a kind of found family online in World of Warcraft, and then he passed away. So then they had like in-game like reenactments of full transcripts of his conversations with this group of people that he was like super. It's insanely good. It's incredible, and like this movie touches on those kinds of topics like isolation and community, like unexpected community, and the kind of collaborative nature of like disappearing into a world in the internet and everything, but like not to the extent that the Remarkable Life of Evelyn, or to the extent of like Bo Burnham's Inside, which those are two examples that are like probably it's not fair to judge this against, but it's the closest that I can kind of come to like exploring like what this is in terms of art. So it was a good effort. I enjoyed it. But I feel like it could have really handled some of those themes a little bit. I don't know, a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I think that, I it's awesome. So I think so many people have found a lot more like profundity, like in this documentary, in meaning than I personally did. Yeah. I didn't I kind of felt like a lot of, like I said, like a lot of the themes that were spoken to me, I was like, well, I've kind of seen these themes presented in much more impactful ways, but I do think this is an incredibly clever and engaging way, to deliver these themes. And ultimately I really enjoyed the ride. I thought it was a very, like I said, it's very novel and it's very fun. I think it was missing that level of pathos that would have gone from just good to great for me.
Yes.
I think the subjects of the documentary, I just never really was incredibly invested in them. There was never a moment where I go, oh, are they gonna, is it gonna work out? Like, is it not gonna work? I just never there. And I think at the end of the movie, we kind of get a glimpse of like the real life subjects of the document. We actually get like a IRL look at them after they've done this, and I didn't sort of get that like sense of satisfaction that a lot of documentaries give me. I was just like, oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Still though, I mean, this is it's a tough one for me to talk about because I feel like it did exactly what I expected, like exactly what it says on the box.
Exactly.
10, it did exactly that. It did it well. But this isn't like in the pantheon of documentaries for me.
Right. I kind of think, and this is a tough kind of nut to crack with this, but like, I kind of feel like had it been not so, this was born out of the pandemic, but like, had it not been pandemic centric, like if it had been something that they did 10 years ago or whenever Grand Theft Auto Online like started, and did that, it would be more compelling to me. But I think that having it be a product of isolation and lockdown and everything, I kind of even though it is an interesting and relevant document of what it was like for people in isolation like that, it feels like it could have been more, I guess. Yeah. But again, I'm also measuring it against the like unfair yardstick of like Inside and stuff.
Yes. Yeah, no, totally. And I think the scope of this one feels, I think maybe I think the idea of making the documentary exclusively in using Grand Theft Auto footage, I think that's a really cool and clever idea, and they do it well.
Same.
But yeah, it does make the scope feel kind of limited in a way. But I will say there was almost something kind of like Zen-like and comforting of watching just like people messing around on Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I was like, is this what like Gen Z kids feel when they're watching like streamers playing Fortnite or whatever? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like, I was like, I kind of get it. Like,
Absolutely.
There's something oddly soothing about this.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy to like, a lot of kind of the goofy people you meet along the way in this documentary of there's a moment when they meet this woman, and it's like an aunt playing her nephew's game, and I thought that was like really funny. And then there's also people like the guy dressed as an alien. You can almost, he's like, you can never get a read on this guy. He's like always being kind of weird and making weird comments. And I was like, wow, this is such a perfect encapsulation of just the kind of weird people you meet gaming online.
Absolutely.
And like the anonymity of like, who is this person that I'm talking to? Like they have a whole life and I can't even like see their face, and I mean, so there is something very cool about like the challenge of finding these people in a game and getting them to do something that is like the opposite instinct of what you're supposed to do in this game. which is create carnage and chaos.
Yes.
And you're trying to find enough people to do something that is like communal and, you know, like something that is just the complete opposite of like working together to do something kind of quote unquote positive rather than just destroying something. You're trying to create something in the game. You know, that's fun. That's like a fun challenge. And it kind of does make me think of, I don't know, like it gives you a great appreciation for the universality of like Shakespeare, obviously, which again, not necessarily a new theme or not anything new, you know. I think like you could look at something like Baz Luhrmann's like Romeo and Juliet and get that much, you know?
Yeah.
And also, like just kind of it did help me see kind of like a beauty in like the creation of video games like Grand Theft Auto and these open worlds.
Oh, totally.
It did kind of have me look at that in a way I never had before, you know, as like these games that like almost foster like self-expression in the players. I thought that was kind of cool.
I did too. And it's funny because I come across a lot of like TikToks and stuff of people that are doing like Grand Theft Auto Online. They are like, they're role playing, like they're full on role playing. Like I think it's like on PC and there's like mods and everything, but like people like are role playing being cops and like they're pulling people over and they're in on it. They're doing a full on traffic stop. They're communicating with the dispatcher, and like there's like a car chase that I saw once where it was like, okay, we're going east on Vinewood, we're going west on this, and I'm just like, that's a level of just like not intricacy, but there's a level of like commitment to that I just want to go blow shit up.
Effort and organization.
Yes.
That I just do not have the bandwidth for.
Right.
I'm usually playing video game. The rare moments when I do play a video game, it is like to completely zone out.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I do with Grand Theft Auto. I'll just go and just do my thing. Which also this is random and we can kind of start to wind down a bit, but I did have the realization that one of my favorite podcasts is Comedy Bang Bang. And I kind of had the realization because I was playing Grand Theft Auto and I was thinking like, man, like, okay, Grand Theft Auto 6 is coming out like later this year, hopefully, maybe early next year. And it's going to be massive. It's going to be a huge thing. And it's been like 15 years or 10 or 15 years since Grand Theft Auto 5 came out. Like in that time, there's been such a rise of like podcasts have exploded. And like one of the most fun things about the Grand Theft Auto games is like listening to the radio and listening to like talk radio. And I realized like, oh my God, like I think that like the talk radio stations in the old Grand Theft Auto games are like partially why I am such a fan of like improv comedy, like Comedy Bang Bang, because it's so outlandish. It's so crazy. It's so like everyone's just bringing weirdness to the table and it's hilarious. But then I also naturally I also thought like, I wonder what they're going to do in Grand Theft Auto 6 if they do anything to like adapt for like podcasting, like because there is a wealth of parody. Like they could have an entire section of the game be just parodies of podcasts. So I don't know.
I wonder if they would be like, if you can't already do this, like, oh, you can just hook up your own podcast and music too. I
have wanted that for decades at this point. I don't think there is.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is the time you can do it.
I really hope so. I really hope so, because that would be awesome. That would be really awesome. But
it would be. I can consume even more media at once.
Exactly. I mean, I'll already like have the volume low, or I'll change the settings in the game to where like the radio doesn't like the volume is off, and I'll just listen to a podcast while driving around in GTA and killing people. But
not total non sequitur, but I'm very much that was a big motivation in me buying a PlayStation 5.
Oh, nice.
A few months ago, I was like, okay, like Grand Theft Auto 6 will come out, and I will need to have a PlayStation 5 for that.
Yep, that's where I'm at now. Like this is so. Oh my god, this is like so. Like I mentioned this in my monkey like immediate reaction recording on Patreon, but like I'm about to get my bonus at work, and I need like if I can finagle it, I need to use it to get a new car. That's what I need to do. Like I need to get a new car because mine is a piece of junk. But like I also thought like, man, I also want a PS5 and then I just imagined like because of the world that we're in right now, I just imagined like someone saying like, "Oh, what are you going to do with your bonus check?" And then like I'll just be like, "Buy insulin." Because
right.
Yeah. So
yeah, we'll see. It's who knows where we're headed.
Yep. But anyway,
I want to a hope that like it won't be as bad as I think it will be.
right.
It's all I can do.
Yep. I don't know if I've said this anywhere, but and I swear to God, we can be wrapping up this review because this is way off the tangent. But like, I have started like, and which is something I should already have been doing just in general, but because of everything, I'm like, I'm gonna stock my pantry. I'm gonna buy an extra thing of toilet paper just in case. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Yep.
Why not? Now
I'll-
doesn't.
Yeah, I'll get a PlayStation Plus subscription so that I can play GTA Online and put together a production of I don't know.
Hamlet 2.
Hamlet 2. Yes, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But having said that, do we have anything else to say about Grand Theft Hamlet, which again is streaming on MUBI and available on VOD right now?
No, I'd say it's if the premise sounds appealing to you, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Same here. And what did you rate it on Letterboxd?
3.5 out of 5 stars.
Same here. Very solid. It was a good, unique documentary, and I liked it. Yeah. So that is our review of Grand Theft Hamlet. And Mitch, do you have time for a quick potpourri section?
Let's do it.
All right, nice. So if this is your first time listening, Potpourri is a section of the podcast where we kind of wind things down and we end the show with a kind of a round robin, quick discussion of things that we've watched, things that we're looking forward to, whatever we want, as long as it smells good. And Mitch, since you are my guest here this evening, would you like to share with us what you've brought for Potpourri?
Sure, yeah. How many things do you want me to point out? Like one or two?
One or two is fine, yeah.
All right, cool. So, recently there was the release of a giant, big Marvel movie that seemingly disappointed everybody. Captain America: Brave New World. I still vaguely want to watch that. I don't know why, but
sure.
I kind of do. Yeah. So I went and watched a Marvel movie, which is actually like not streaming anywhere, but I was able to find it though, through a mutual friend of ours.
Sure.
And you can find the movie on YouTube. So if you want to YouTube it, I would recommend it. This is one of actually the very first Marvel movies ever made. And that would be 1989's The Punisher, starring Dolph Lundgren as Frank Castle, aka The Punisher.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I used to own this DVD when I was like in middle school. I remember getting it from FYE, that store. Shout out.
Yeah.
Yes. This is a very hokey, goofy, Canon Studios style action movie from the 80s. It's exactly what you would think of a 80s Punisher movie starring Dolph Lundgren would be like. He fights scuba ninjas at one point. That's pretty cool. He kind of just struts around in public all the time in this movie. Nobody seems to be trying to arrest him.
Oh, wow.
One of the opening scenes, he kills this mob boss who's freshly released from prison, who looks at the camera. They go, "What do you think about the Punisher? Are you worried that he's coming after you?" And he goes, "I'd like to see him try. He'll be looking at the end of a barrel." And the next scene, of course, the Punisher's killing him, and the Punisher walks out, Dolph Lundgren, out of this house, and you hear a reporter go, "Holy shit, it's the Punisher!"
Good God.
So I would recommend that movie. I had a great time watching it. And it just, I would say I have two knocks against it.
Mm-hmm.
One, not the movie's fault, but you can't watch this movie very easily.
Sure.
And the other thing is, he is not wearing a Skull t-shirt.
Oh,
He's
really?
wearing a black leather jacket.
Oh, that's weird.
And I'm a little confused. I just don't think that was probably very difficult to make, right? With the wardrobe department.
Right. You would think
that t-shirt.
I wonder if that has any, I wonder if there's any like rights issues or something like that. But I mean, it's the Punisher, it's Frank Castle. Like I can't imagine that they could do that without,
Well, right. They clearly had the rights to him.
Yeah.
So. And in fact, the Skull does make an appearance because he has these knives that he throws, and they're on the end of the handles, the Skull. So,
interesting.
Anyways, so watched that, gave that a solid 3.5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. Or want, to watch a really early Marvel movie.
Very cool.
This is the earliest you can find. I would recommend it.
That's awesome.
I would the last comment I would make about that in general is, for such a simple character, comic book character, the Punisher,
mm-hmm.
they really have a hard time making an actual good Punisher adaptation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Why is it so hard? There's not a lot you need to do.
No.
That movie this Dolph Lundgren movie is fun, but it's not necessarily a good Punisher movie.
Sure.
The Thomas Jane movie that came out like 20 years ago, not exactly a very good movie either.
Right.
Has some strong elements. And the Punisher Warzone with Ray Stevenson, also pretty heavily flawed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Punisher TV show with John Bernthal was almost unwatchable.
Was it? I never got around to it.
It was so boring.
Oh, dang.
It's like him sitting in he barely does any Punisher stuff in it. It's insane. So not good. So anyways, I was just watching this. I was like, this might be the best Punisher movie.
Wow.
Yeah. So I watched that, and I would also recommend one other thing I recently saw on Shudder. You can stream this on Shudder. It's a 1995 Japanese film, basically very DIY Evil Dead style practical effects. It's called Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell.
Okay. All right.
What a title.
Yeah.
Great little haunted house, trapped in a house, demons and blood spraying, crazy practical effects, very handmade, 1990s Evil Dead knockoff. So I would recommend that if that's kind of your jam. The movie's only 60 minutes long. Feels about 2 hours long. I would say it takes a little too get revved up, but once it's going, it's very good. So the Punisher and Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell, which honestly could be the name of Punisher.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's awesome. I did not expect those words to come out of your mouth when you were about to say the title. That is that sells me on it for sure.
I try to come with some strong recommendations that maybe your listeners weren't top of mind for your listeners,
right? And I appreciate that.
Finest quality cinema.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And speaking of highest quality cinema, I will go ahead and round out this potpourri with a little thing called On Cinema at the Cinema that I've been watching. Yes. So for those who don't know, On Cinema at the Cinema is a series on Adult Swim, and now is it now like on just like the internet on High TV or
So
whatever?
now it's like on High Network.
High Network.
TV, HEI Network.tv, and you can do an annual subscription for, I want to say, $50.
That sounds right.
Something like that. Pretty reasonable, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And you can get access to all of the episodes, new episodes, things like that. It used to be an Adult Swim web series,
Yes.
but I think Adult Swim does not, like, I just think they couldn't get funding from Adult Swim anymore. So.
Sure. Yeah, but what it is it is a it's a show for film buffs. It is this it's kind of like an alternative comedy or anti-comedy sort of like parody of like a Siskel and Ebert style movie review show, and it's Tim Heidecker and Greg Turkington, and the depths that it goes to, not review movies, but to just go into the characters that they're playing of themselves, is just like bonkers, insane, hilarious. I am 9 seasons in, and it's just amazing. I'm just a huge fan of it. So yeah. And I know that Mitch, you're a huge fan as well.
I am, and it's almost a multimedia. I mean, it is like a multimedia, property, really, because there are the proper On Cinema episodes, but there are spin-off TV shows, like a secret agent show called Decker, which is Tim's On Cinema character playing a character. And that level of acting is really crazy.
It is incredible. Like the way that in the Decker series, the way that he just like does that, like it's weird because like I feel like season 1 is absolutely like doing like maybe a Jean-Claude Van Damme thing or like a riff on someone.
Yes.
But
he like puts a gun to the president's head at one point. Like
it's brilliant. It's brilliant. But like the way that he like mugs for the camera, because like and also in season 2, the Hawaii season of Decker, it's like he's doing something completely different with the character. But it's I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it's like it is like top tier it is of a very specific sense of humor that if you're not keyed into it, you will think it's like ridiculous, dumb. Like I don't know how anyone cannot find it hilarious, but it's amazing. And they do the Oscar specials I've watched 4 of them now. Amazing.
Yeah, it's a great show. It can feel a little intimidating for how dense and how much of it there is.
Yeah.
However, start with just season 1, episode 1, and see if it's your thing. It only really gets better. I kind of have felt like this is the comedic equivalent of like, yeah, because you mentioned it's basically it's like the definition of like a cult show.
Yeah.
Like it's like the definition of a cult show. Because if you find it hilarious, you're probably gonna become obsessed with it.
Yes.
It's so dense and there's so much mythology surrounding it that you can really dive deep if you want to. But I feel like this is the comedy equivalent of like getting into like the Grateful Dead or something. Because when you're trying to describe it to somebody, you sound like a crazy person.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But once you get into it, it's almost like you're speaking a different language when you talk about it to other fans. And I'm so glad a lot of people I know, like you and our fellow colleague Evan Dossie, have really gotten into it, because it is one of my favorite things ever, I think. And if listeners give it a shot, I think you will really get invested in kind of the arc of these two characters.
Yeah.
Tim Heidecker's just insane downward spiral.
Every season too. It's like
just completely self-destructive and
yes,
an egomaniac. and Greg Turkington just the saddest,
Yes.
but also
Like it's
oddly
just
kind of arrogant and pretentious.
yes. Like it is. There are so many layers to these characters that it's insane. Like the little sniping that they do at each other throughout like every show basically is like the fact that I've watched like 90 episodes of it now, and like it still feels fresh, and like you said, the lore, the kind of mythology that's built up around it it goes to so many different ways that like it's so unique. It's great.
I've seen every episode multiple times.
Nice.
So that's kind of where I'm at with the show. I've watched it for years and years and years. It's one of my favorite things ever.
Yeah, I had originally discovered it. Like I just discovered the podcast. I think I saw like a Reddit thread one day, and like I listened to like the podcast version, like several episodes of that, and I thought like this is genius. I may have actually talked about it on the podcast at some point, but like it was genius as like a parody of the thing that I'm doing right now, the thing that I've committed my life to doing basically at this point. It's like a perfect parody of like movie podcasts, and like the show is no different.
Yes, it is a perfect parody, and the way they speak with such authority while having so little knowledge is like it's like a perfect example of like the dark side of YouTube film criticism and podcast where on the internet everybody's a critic now, everybody's an expert. It's such a pointed satire of so many different things, while still I've seen people kind of say how this is like such a great satire of like Trump's America and like right-wing politics. And it does all of these things, like where it's like parody of bad film criticism of right-wing politics without ever feeling obvious or preachy, or it's so perfectly its own thing. I mean, it's amazing. It works on so many levels. Absolutely.
And when you got films like Tom Cruise in them, you can't lose. Movies like Tom Cruise. But yeah.
You got movies like Tom Cruise in them.
You can't lose.
One of the great opening
so great
theme songs. Quiet on set.
Yeah. Should I see a movie this weekend? I scared pizza with that.
Great. Oh, yeah.
So great. So I highly recommend everyone go watch On Cinema at the Cinema. It's genius, and I'm so glad that I've dived.
I believe.
Yes.
Proper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I have dove into it. It's fun. So I think that will conclude this episode, Mitch. Thank you so much for joining me. If you could tell people where they can find you online, and where they can find you online and follow more of your work.
Yeah, you can find me at Midwest Film Journal, and you can follow me on Letterboxd if you would like, which is my profile is wounded_kite. So if you want to follow me there.
Nice. And links to all that will be in the show notes of this episode. And Mitch, thank you so much once again for joining me. And to the listeners, that's it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer. As always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out Obsessive Viewer Podcast's other shows, Tower Junkies and Anthology. And next week on the show, I'm going to start playing us out here. Next week on the show, I think I'm going to be reviewing Last Breath. We'll see. Not sure what the secondary review will be, but that's part of the fun here at Obsessive Viewer. So until then, Mitch, once again, thank you for joining me, and can't wait to have you back on at some point. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, man. I had a blast.
Same here. And thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And I think that there's an interesting correlation between that episode of The Office and that episode of Severance, or that scene in Severance, that I find it interesting that basically that episode of The Office has Pam being extremely vulnerable, very much at her wit's end. She is upset because Jim's with Karen, and she's not he's back in the office, but he's back from Stanford, but it's not the same and everything. It's all stuff that she says at the beach day at the end of the season, and she's feeling very unfulfilled with being back with Roy and everything. So everything is discombobulated. Like, she can't go back to the same life she had before, because everything has changed. So she's not happy with Roy, and now she's lost her friendship that with Jim. A lot of things have changed with her, and she's in a bad place in that point. But the moment, the incredibly powerful moment of that episode, is that Michael comes in at the end of it, and he's like, yeah, I had to rush across town. Sorry, I couldn't make it. And it shows that he actually, he cares about Pam, and he cares about his employees and everything. He is someone who is there just to support his friend. And I think that there's this subtle connection in this Severance episode, in episode 3, with the wardrobe, because isn't that kind of the same thing, but in a more nefarious way in Severance? Like Lumen and Milchick are basically tantalizing Dylan with this, they're putting up a front of we care, Lumen is listening, and we care about our employees. We're doing all of these incentives because we want you to be happy, and we're not controlling you or anything, but we want you to be happy. And thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.